They used to call me Grandma Ruth with a smile. Now they barely call me anything at all. I live in the shadows of the house I helped pay for, spoken to like furniture, if I'm noticed at all. But something changed the day I heard them whisper through the hedge. That day, I stopped feeling old. I started feeling dangerous. Saturday mornings used to be for pancakes and jazz records. That was back when I had a house of my own, a mailbox with my name on it, and a porch where the sunlight came in soft and slow. Now, my Saturdays begin with the beep of a child's monitor and the faint thud of footsteps from the main house, usually Dana's, always fast, always irritated, like even the floorboards offended her. I live in what they call the mother-in-law suite, which sounds polite until you realize it's just a detached storage room they converted into something barely livable. No insulation, thin drywall, and a window that sticks every time I try to open it. I helped pay for it, of course. $25,000 from what was left of Paul's pension after he passed. I didn't offer. Robert asked, said it was temporary. That was 5 years ago. This morning, I was up before the kids, before the birds even. My knees groaned when I got out of bed. I put the kettle on and stood there watching the steam curl like smoke from a candle. Dana says I keep the place too cold, but the heat makes me dizzy. She says a lot of things. I don't argue. Arguing implies equal footing, and around here, I'm more like a piece of furniture, helpful when convenient, otherwise invisible. I baked the apple pie early. Lily likes it warm, with cinnamon heavy and crust a little burnt around the edges, the way Paul used to make it. She calls it grandma pie. I still make it by hand. Dana once suggested I use frozen crust to save time, as if time is something I have appointments with. I dusted the counter with flour, pressed the dough slowly. My hands aren't what they used to be. The joints in my thumbs swell like little balloons after too much kneading, but I work through it. There's a kind of defiance in doing something you're not supposed to anymore. By 10, the backyard was buzzing. Robert had invited neighbors over for a barbecue. I wasn't told, of course. I heard it from Lily the night before when she asked if I'd make my peach iced tea. I made a gallon, set it on the patio table like a good little ghost. Dana had on a linen dress that made her look like she had somewhere important to be. She didn't say hello. She never does when other people are around. Robert offered me a nod from across the yard. That was more than usual. I carried out the plates, refilled the ketchup, cleaned a spill that nobody claimed. At one point, I heard Dana laugh and say to a guest, "She's amazing. Doesn't ask for anything. It's like having live-in help with no payroll." I smiled through it. That's the trick, you see. You learn to smile while your dignity leaks out through the soles of your shoes. Around 5, after the last plastic cup had hit the bin and the folding chairs were dragged into the garage, I went to fetch the bench cushion from the yard. The sun was low, and the air smelled of charcoal and citronella. I took the long way around the hedges. They've grown thick this year, unruly, just like Lily's hair. That's when I heard them. Their voices drifted through the hedge like heat rising from pavement. Robert's was first. Flat, tired. "I'm telling you, I don't know how much longer this can go on." Dana snorted. "Why is she even still alive? Jesus. Every morning I think, maybe today's the day." He didn't laugh. Not exactly. But he didn't stop her either. "I mean it," she said. "She's what? 74? What the hell is she clinging to?" Robert sighed. "She's not sick." "Not yet," Dana snapped. "But she's forgetful. Did you see the pills this week? She took 2 one day. She's slipping. We could start documenting." My hand tightened around the cushion. I didn't move. Not yet. "She's not going anywhere on her own," Dana continued. "You think she's going to just pack up? You know what'll happen. She'll die here, and we'll be stuck sorting through her hoarding and moldy cookbooks. Unless we help things along." Silence. Then laughter. Quiet, shared, mean. I turned, slowly. The cushion slipped from my fingers and fell into the damp grass. I didn't care. My throat felt like it was closing. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I walked back to my suite with the careful steps of someone trying not to wake a sleeping monster. Inside, I sat at the edge of my bed and looked around. A cracked mirror. A chair with one leg shorter than the rest. A photo of Paul, dusty and forgotten on the shelf. My heart beat loud in my ears. My hands curled in my lap. I stayed up the entire night, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel old. I felt dangerous. I didn't sleep, but I didn't feel tired. Not in the way you do after a restless night. It was more like something had been peeled back, a layer of skin or silence, and underneath there was this strange hum. A readiness. I sat in that chair until the window turned from black to blue, listening to the pipes groan in the main house, the fridge cycle, the world waking up. It didn't feel like my world anymore. At 6:30 sharp, the door to the main house creaked open and little Lily came running barefoot across the dew-covered grass. She always forgot her shoes. I met her outside with a towel for her feet. "Pie?" she asked, half yawning, half smiling. "In the fridge," I said, kissing the top of her head. She smelled like shampoo and sunshine. I held her a second longer than usual. She ran back toward the house with a plastic fork and no plate. I watched her until the screen door slammed. Then I turned inside, poured water for tea, and reached for my pills. That's when I paused. I've taken the same blood pressure medication for over a decade. Small, pale yellow tablets that sit like chalk on your tongue. What I held in my hand now was oval and white. A different manufacturer, maybe? I checked the bottle. Same name, different dosage. A spike of cold crawled up my spine. I checked the rest. The dosage was doubled. Every bottle, painkillers, diuretic. Even the vitamin D Dana insisted on ordering for me through her discount supplier. I couldn't breathe for a moment. My hands started to shake. I put the pills down, very gently, like they might explode. At 9, I walked into the Walgreens near the library, told the pharmacist I had some concerns about my meds, and showed him the bottles. He squinted at the labels, then raised his eyebrows. "These were refilled under your name last week?" I nodded. "They're real, but this dosage..." He hesitated. "This isn't standard, especially not all at once. You could have, well, side effects. Serious ones. Who requested the refill?" "My daughter-in-law," I said. He gave me a look I've seen before. The one people use when they think you're exaggerating but are too polite to say so. I walked out without asking for anything else. My knees hurt more than usual, and my back tensed like it knew something I didn't yet. I stopped by the bus stop bench outside the community center and sat, blinking against the morning sun. At home, Dana was in the kitchen. I could see her through the window flipping pancakes. She didn't look up. I entered through the side and headed to the laundry room, just to stay out of her way. A few minutes later, she followed. "You didn't take your pills this morning," she said, arms crossed, leaning against the doorway like some kind of casual interrogator. "I wasn't feeling well," I replied. "Maybe that's because you're skipping your meds. You've been foggy lately. Robert and I were just talking about that. We're worried." I stared at her. "Foggy?" "Yes. Repeating yourself. Forgetting things. It's starting to worry the kids." Her voice was syrupy now. Too smooth. Too slow. I said nothing. She walked closer, lowered her voice. "You're 74, Ruth. These things happen. It's not your fault. But you need to trust us. We're trying to help." She smiled. It was the kind of smile you see on mannequins. I nodded once. She left. That afternoon, Lily didn't come by. Neither did Jake. I sat on the porch, listening to the wind through the ivy, but the yard stayed quiet. Around 4, I heard the garage door open and close again. Car doors slamming. I didn't move. I didn't go ask. I didn't want to hear another version of, "We're busy." When the sun dipped low, I went to my nightstand and pulled out the old address book. I flipped past pages with fading ink and names I hadn't called in years until I found a number. Dr. Willis, my old physician. Retired now, but his wife still ran a floral shop downtown. I called. "Ruth?" she said, voice rising in surprise. "Oh, honey, it's been ages." We talked for 10 minutes, just catching up. I didn't mention Dana. Not yet. But I asked her for something. "Would you know someone, quiet, discreet, who could help me look into a few things?" There was a pause. Then she said, "Let me call you back tomorrow." After we hung up, I locked my door. For the first time in years, I wedged a chair beneath the handle, just in case. Around midnight, I heard something. A voice. Lily's. Through the wall, faint but clear. "Why can't I go see Grandma?" Then Dana's answer, sharper than a slap. "Because Grandma needs rest. And she's not safe right now. She's confused." Silence. I laid in bed with my eyes wide open. Safe. That's what she said. And I knew then, with perfect clarity, that she didn't just want me out. She wanted me gone. The next morning, I didn't make tea. I didn't open the curtains. I didn't even touch my pill bottles. I sat at the edge of my bed, staring at the chair I'd wedged under the doorknob, and I waited. At 8:30, there was a knock. Not loud, not urgent, but insistent. I opened the door a crack and saw two people on the steps, one in scrubs, the other in a navy windbreaker with a badge clipped to the chest. My stomach sank. "Mrs. Weller?" the woman asked. "I'm from the Adult Protective Services Unit. This is Officer Trent, local PD. We received a call expressing concern about your well-being." Behind them, the sun was just beginning to catch on the rose trellis. I couldn't tell if it was morning light or panic that made everything look so sharp. "I didn't call anyone," I said. "No, ma'am," the officer said. "Your family did. They're worried you may be struggling with memory issues. Would you mind if we came in for a short wellness check?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to slam the door and scream. But instead, I opened it wider and stepped back. They didn't touch anything, just looked around, asked simple questions. My name, the date, the president. I answered calmly. I even smiled. Years of working with fourth graders had taught me how to maintain composure when everything inside you is flailing. The woman jotted notes on a clipboard, nodded thoughtfully, then leaned toward me. "Your daughter-in-law mentioned you've been mixing up medications, that you've been forgetful, maybe even hallucinating." I stared at her, then said very quietly, "My daughter-in-law is poisoning me." They exchanged a glance. The kind that passes too quickly, like a wind moving through leaves. "I see," she said. They left 20 minutes later with nothing to detain me, but with plenty of concern hanging in the air like smoke. Dana was waiting near the porch when they left. She didn't say anything, just looked at me with this faint smile on her lips, like a cat who'd batted the bird but hadn't yet killed it. That afternoon, I tried calling Robert at his office. No answer. I left a message. Nothing accusatory. Just, "I need to talk to you about what's happening." He never called back. When I went to make lunch, the fridge was nearly empty. The groceries I'd bought the week before, gone. I opened the pantry. Same story. No oatmeal, no crackers, not even my jar of peanut butter. The cupboards had been cleared out like a stage set after closing night. I stood there for a moment, one hand on the counter to keep my knees from giving out. Then I walked to the garage, opened the small chest where I kept Paul's old lockbox, and it wasn't there. Gone. When I confronted Dana, she shrugged. I moved some things around. We needed space. And frankly, you're not the only one who eats in this house. I could have hit her. Instead, I turned around and went straight back to my suite. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat at my little desk and wrote everything down. The pills, the visit from the city, the missing food. I didn't trust myself to remember everything clearly anymore, not because I was losing my mind, but because someone else wanted everyone to think I was. The next day, Lily found me on the steps with a blanket around my shoulders. She looked worried. "Mom says you're sick," she whispered. "I'm not," I said. "Are you going away?" I hesitated. "Maybe," I told her. "But not until I'm ready, and not because someone else tells me to." She looked at me with those big eyes, Paul's eyes, and nodded, like she understood something she wouldn't have the words for until she was much older. That night, I couldn't sleep again. Around 2 a.m, I heard footsteps outside. I peeked through the curtain. Someone, tall, barefoot, was standing by my window, just watching. Then they turned and walked away. I didn't go back to bed. I waited until dawn, packed a small bag, and took the bus into town. I didn't go to the police. I'd seen what they do with family matters. I went instead to a name given to me by Dr. Willis's wife, a young woman named Myra, a private attorney who ran her practice out of a converted hair salon downtown. Her office smelled like fresh paint and cheap coffee. I told her everything. She didn't interrupt, didn't smile, just took notes and nodded slowly. When I finished, she leaned forward. "Mrs. Weller," she said, "this isn't just elder abuse. This is targeted isolation, coercion, and attempted financial manipulation. And we can prove it." I blinked. I hadn't heard anyone say it out loud before. "I'm not crazy?" I asked. Myra shook her head. "Number. But they're counting on everyone else thinking you are." I exhaled, slowly, like air leaving a punctured tire. She handed me a folder and a list. "I'm going to need records, paper trails, any documentation you can get, emails, texts, bank statements. If they've got you under power of attorney, we can challenge it. But we need proof." I nodded. And in that moment, I stopped being afraid. I wasn't just someone's mother anymore. I was a witness. The bus ride back felt longer than usual. I sat near the window, folder in my lap, watching the town go by like it belonged to someone else. The trees were turning, just beginning to crisp at the edges, and kids in jackets darted down sidewalks with lunchboxes swinging at their sides. I used to love this season. Paul would rake the leaves into giant piles and pretend to lose his glasses in them so the children could dig them out like treasure. Now I just watched everything through glass. Quiet, unseen, moving, but never arriving. When I got home, I didn't go straight to the main house. I went to my suite and locked the door. Not just the knob, but the bolt as well. I pulled the blinds down, sat at my little table and spread the folder out like it was a map of something still possible. Step 1 was the bank. I needed the old statements, the ones that proved I'd never authorized half of what had been withdrawn over the last year. Myra had said to look for patterns. Large cash withdrawals, sudden transfers, bills I didn't recognize. I had to be careful. My name was still technically on the joint account Robert managed for my household needs. That's how he justified moving my pension into it. I waited until late morning, when I knew Dana would be at her Pilates class. Yes, the same one she pays for using the credit card linked to my Social Security. I left a note on my door. Out walking. Then I headed into town. The bank manager was a young man named Caleb, all shiny shoes and practiced concern. I asked for transaction history, politely, with a gentle tremor in my voice that had nothing to do with my nerves and everything to do with arthritis. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Weller," he said after typing for what felt like hours. "This account is under a dual authorization, and there are limits to what I can release without both parties present." I leaned closer. "Caleb, I know you're just doing your job, but I think someone's stealing from me." That made him pause. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Can you at least print a summary for me?" I asked. just for my records." He did. Hesitant, but he did. I folded it carefully and slid it into my purse, my heart pounding like I'd robbed the place. Back at the suite, I locked the door again. I checked every window. Then I opened the summary and started circling dates. March 12th, $800 at a boutique in Santa Clara. April 21st, $1,600 to an emergency home repair company. I live in a box with one outlet that sparks if I plug in a second lamp. What exactly did they repair? That night, I didn't cook. I didn't leave a casserole on the back porch like I usually did. Dana knocked once, then left. Robert didn't knock at all. Instead, I started digging through the drawers beneath my bed. I found my old cell phone. Dead, dusty, but still intact. I charged it. Searched the gallery. Dozens of photos. Paul in the backyard, Lily in my lap, a screen grab of my last tax return. I scrolled further and found something I didn't even remember saving. A voice memo. I played it. It was from last year. Dana's voice. Sharp, rushed, full of frustration. "She's never going to leave on her own. I don't care how sick she gets. We need that room for the baby." There never was a baby. I transferred it to a USB stick Myra gave me, marked with a red sticker. Next morning, I called the pharmacy and asked them to reprint my prescription history. The pharmacist on duty was an older woman with dyed red hair and a necklace that said, "Blessed," in cursive. When I explained what I needed, her face tightened. "You poor thing," she whispered, printing the sheets. "This happens more than you'd think." I nodded. That's what scares me. When I got home, I saw Lily's drawing taped to my door, a stick figure with curly white hair and a crooked smile. Grandma, written in glitter pen. Underneath, in smaller letters, a note. "I miss you." I didn't cry. Instead, I took out the small recorder Myra had given me and slid it into my sweater pocket. That afternoon, I left the door open just wide enough for sound to carry. I sat at my desk, writing nothing, waiting. At 5:23, Dana's voice floated in from the kitchen window. She can't even remember the mailman's name. She stares at her food for 10 minutes before eating it. It's getting worse. Robert mumbled something. Then Dana again. If we wait any longer, she'll slip in the tub and die. And then what? A lawsuit? A whole mess we could have avoided? Click. I saved the file. The next day, I called Myra. "I have what you asked for." She didn't ask what. She just said, "Good. We move forward now." But before I hung up, I said, "There's one more thing." A name came up in that old phone message. Someone Dana mentioned. A doctor who doesn't exist. I think she's forged a medical letter. Myra's voice dropped. If she has, that's not just unethical, that's criminal. I looked out the window. Robert's truck had just pulled in. Dana stood on the porch with her arms crossed, like a queen surveying her kingdom. I smiled, let her pose. I was about to steal the throne. I spent the next 3 days in silence. Not the kind of silence where you're ignored or overlooked, but the kind you choose. Like armor. I didn't speak unless I had to. I didn't bring in the mail or sweep the porch or offer to make dinner. I became a ghost in the garden, a shadow behind curtained glass. And Dana, for all her calculating cruelty, didn't like what she couldn't control. I watched her from my window. The way she paced when packages arrived. How she checked the outdoor camera feed from her phone. Her tension vibrated through the air like a low electric hum. She was losing patience, and nothing made me more certain I was close to something than her unraveling calm. Myra had been busy. She filed a request for an emergency injunction to block any medical claims Dana might have falsified. We didn't want her declaring me mentally unfit and slapping conservatorship papers on my back door. Myra also handed over the audio recordings, banking records, and prescription printouts to a contact at the County Elder Rights Division. They'd seen enough to launch a preliminary investigation. But what changed everything was the article. It ran on a Thursday morning. A local columnist, Amber Lee, published it under the headline, "Invisible Chains: How Elder Abuse Hides in Plain Sight." It didn't name me, but it didn't need to. The story followed a composite of several local reports. A woman in her 70s, manipulated into handing over financial power, isolated in a back house, denied medical autonomy, gaslit and discredited by family. She used my words, carefully disguised, of course, but I recognized every line. I found a copy of the paper wedged under my door, and a note written in neat black ink. "You are not alone. A.L." By noon, the effect had rippled across the neighborhood. Mrs. Kramer from 3 houses down brought by a tin of cookies and asked, too casually, if I was doing all right, in general. The mailman lingered longer than usual. He handed me my letters directly, held my gaze. "Anything else you need today, ma'am?" But the biggest reaction came from the people inside the house. That evening, Dana banged on my door without knocking. "What the hell did you do?" I looked at her, calm. "I baked a pie." "Don't play with me." Her face was flushed. Her nostrils flared. Behind her, Robert hovered, arms crossed, clearly not sure whose side he was supposed to be on. "You think you can make us look like monsters?" she hissed. "You think anyone will believe your version? You forget things, Ruth. You take the wrong pills. You talk to yourself." "I know exactly what I'm doing," I said. She laughed. "You always had a martyr complex. Now you want to die the hero in some Lifetime movie? You're pathetic." She slammed the door so hard a framed photo of Paul fell off my shelf. I picked it up, slowly, and set it back. Then I packed a small bag with the essentials: the USB drive, printed documents, my birth certificate, 2 changes of clothes, and the old envelope Paul had left me before he died. Inside it was $500 in cash and a note. "In case you ever need to run, or start over." The next morning, I met Myra at the courthouse. Dana and Robert were already there. He looked wrecked, sleepless, like a man just beginning to realize the collateral damage of the life he'd built. Dana looked polished, controlled. She wore navy. She didn't glance at me once. The hearing wasn't long. Myra was sharp, efficient, and devastatingly clear. She laid out the evidence: the altered prescriptions, the financial irregularities, the recordings. Then she introduced the columnist, Amber, who submitted an affidavit confirming her anonymous interviewee had provided substantial corroboration. Then, in the final blow, Myra presented a forged medical document signed by a doctor, Helen Bryce, a name we'd traced to a defunct clinic in Arizona. The judge raised an eyebrow. Dana spoke only once. "She's lying." The judge leaned back in his chair. "You're welcome to provide documentation refuting any of these claims. But based on what I've seen today, I'm issuing an immediate order revoking all financial and medical authority previously assigned to the respondents. Furthermore, I am referring this case to the district attorney's office for further review under elder abuse statutes." We walked out in silence. Robert tried to say something, stopped, then just lowered his head. Dana didn't look back. By the time we reached the parking lot, the news had already hit local radio. I wasn't naive. I knew this wasn't over. There would be interviews, legal depositions, maybe even a trial. But I had the truth. I had people who believed me. That night, Lily slipped away from the house and knocked on my door. She held out a wrinkled paper heart. On it, she'd written, "I love you more than Mom is mad." I hugged her tighter than I ever had. My voice cracked when I whispered, "You don't have to be scared anymore, sweetheart." Neither do I. And for the first time in years, I slept without the chair under the doorknob. The sun was already up by the time I stirred. No alarm, no early knock, no child's cry through the thin walls. Just quiet. Honest quiet. I laid there for a few minutes, listening to it, letting it settle over me like a warm blanket I'd forgotten I owned. Lily's paper heart was still on my nightstand. I ran my fingers over the crayon bumps, rereading her words in the soft morning light. More than Mom is mad. There was something beautiful about that. How children still measure the world in love and fury, not in legality or power. By noon, I had a call from Amber. "They want to run your story with your name," she said. "Full interview, with pictures. We'll keep it respectful, Ruth. But your voice? It matters, especially now." I hesitated, glancing around the little suite that had been both my prison and my sanctuary. My life, reduced to faded linens and 2 stacked bookshelves. Then I said, "Yes, let's do it." The interview came 2 days later. I wore Paul's flannel shirt, the one he used to wear when we painted the den. Amber brought a photographer who spoke very little and smiled a lot. I let her take a picture of me standing by the window, hands clasped, light catching the silver in my hair. I didn't feel small in that photo. I looked like someone who'd survived. The article went viral in the way local news sometimes does when it touches something too real to ignore. By the end of the week, there were emails, messages. A woman from Ohio who said, "I didn't know what was happening to me until I read this." A man from Utah who'd moved his mother out of his brother's home the very next morning. Even the city council reached out. They asked if I'd speak, just for a few minutes, at the opening of a new elder advocacy clinic. I said yes, not because I wanted applause or pity, but because silence had cost me too much. Dana and Robert tried to push back again, briefly. Their lawyer requested a gag order. The judge denied it. A month later, Dana was under formal investigation for fraud and abuse. I never saw her again. Robert wrote me a letter. Not an apology. Not really. Just a sad, hollow thing, full of regret and excuses. I read it once, then folded it into Paul's tool chest and locked the lid. Lily stayed in my life. That was never up for debate. Robert didn't fight me on it. I think he knew she needed at least one adult who'd never lie to her again. I moved out of the suite 2 weeks after the court ruling. Myra helped me find a small rental house across town. 2 bedrooms, front porch, washer and dryer that rattled like bones but still worked. There were daffodils in the front yard when I arrived, and a woman from next door brought me banana bread before I'd even unpacked. Her name was Joan. She used to teach music at the elementary school. We became fast friends. Every Sunday, I hosted coffee on the porch. Sometimes 5 women came, sometimes none. But the invitation stood. Come if you're tired. Come if you need a break. Come if someone's treating you like wallpaper. I even bought a little wooden sign for the table. Not your housekeeper, not your burden. It made Joan laugh every time. The clinic asked me to speak again, this time to a group of newly hired advocates. I wrote a short speech and practiced it in front of the mirror. But when the day came, I tossed it aside and just told them the truth. I used to think getting old meant disappearing, I said. That the world just shrunk until you fit into the smallest corner of someone else's life. But I was wrong. You only disappear if you stop fighting. After the applause, a woman approached me with her teenage daughter. She was crying. "You saved my mom," the girl whispered. She thought she was crazy. I hugged them both and walked out into the afternoon light, squinting up at the sky. Sometimes I miss Paul in the quietest moments, when the coffee finishes brewing, when the porch creaks, when the rain taps against the roof and nobody's around to hear it with me. But I think he'd be proud. I still make Lily's favorite pie, only now I burn the crust on purpose. She says it tastes like memory. I tell her that's what grandmas are for. And every so often when I sit alone at the kitchen table with the soft hum of life moving just outside my window, I smile. Because I didn't vanish. I became loud. I became seen. I became Ruth again.